Hi everyone, it's Linda Canase with LyndaCreates, and this week's project is so much fun. I decided to use the embroidery flower stamp from Stampers Anonymous from Tim Holtz, and I wanted to show how I took this stamp, stamped it onto fabric, and embroidered it to make this floral project. But there's a lot of different techniques I'm going to show you in this video how to stitch this. So come along with me and I'll show you how I did this. So now we're going to start on the stitching part. I always work from the lowest area first. So in this case, I want to do the stems first because the flower and the leaves will be in front of them. I think it's a number 3 embroidery needle. I have the stems done this far. I have just a little bit more up here to do in this color, so I wanted to stop and just show it to you. So I finished the stem of my wild rose, and I'm going to start next on the leaves. And the leaves I'm going to do in 3 shades of green. I'm working with 6 strands, and I'm going to start off with a fly stitch. I'm going to come up, go down to the base, a little bit to the left of the top of that stitch. I'm going to circle or come over to the right side of that same stitch. But before I pull it tight, I'm going to come up in the middle down here. So I'm going to catch this and then go back down on the other side of that. So there's my first leaf. And it's not done yet because I am going to go back in and do some shading, but at least the main part of the leaf is done. I finished the bottom leaves, most of them. This leaf is a folded leaf right here, so I did a little satin stitch there, and I'm going to come back with a different shade of green there. So what I wanted to show you was I'm now coming to these leaves here where the ink, the stamped ink spread, And I'm not that concerned about it where the leaves are because I can stitch over it. Here, right in this area is going to be a little harder, and on the sides of here, but I have an idea of how I'll fix that. So I just want to show you how clean this leaf will look by the time I'm done with it. I wanted to point out a little detail of what I was doing. See where this green stitch meets up with the brown? And I wanted to blend the colors. So what I did was a split stitch, and it's literally like it says, it splits the next stitch. So you can see a little bit of the brown stitch up here and a little down here. I came down right in the middle of the last brown stitch with the green floss so that it looks like it's blended in there. And this is very, very subtle, but in a larger area, it would look really cool when you're doing a split stitch like that to blend the colors. So I just wanted to point that out. So I'm done with the larger areas of the medium green leaves. So I'm going to go in with the darker green and add to a little bit on the darker areas and add a little highlights and low shadows to these leaves. I'm using 3 strands of the darker green just to make it thinner and just work from there. So I'm going to stop there with just this part of the leaf. As I go in to add a little bit of shading to the leaves, I am using a single strand of the dark green again. And if it's too subtle for you, you might want to go with 2 strands of the color. I just wanted to show you the difference between adding a little bit of shading down here and these don't have any shading yet. It's very subtle, and the 2 strands of floss does add more detail to it than 1 strand at a time. And you also want to stitch in the same angle as the leaves, the stitches on the leaves that started it. So I'm going to continue and add a little detail to these leaves next. The shadows on the dark green are in. You can see it there. So now I'm going in with the lightest green, which is 772, DMC 772. And I am going to now go back into these leaves and do the same thing with 2 strands of the DMC floss in the light green and add some highlights. Basically what this is giving it is more of a painterly feel. So I'm going to stop there, and you can see where it added a little highlight on the side of the leaf. So I added the highlights and the shadows on these leaves, and it is very subtle, but you can definitely tell the difference if you don't have it there. So I love how these leaves turned out. So I have a little bit more to go. I'm going to start on the flowers, and I'm using 3 shades of pink, and the majority of the flowers are going to be in this very pale pink, because if you ever look at a wild rose, it's can be almost whitish on the center, and then I'm going to come back in with these two colors like I did on the leaves, and I'll have different shades of darkness, and I will shade them in, but the majority on these, at least these two, are going to be this lightest pink. So this is a blanket stitch, which usually goes on the edge of something. That's why it's edge of a blanket normally. But, oops, twisted about here. So it's like you're doing a blanket stitch almost in place. So you go down, you come out at the top, but you catch the floss at the top end there. And I'm using 6 strands of this light pink. This would be pretty as a cherry blossom too. And I just want to show, when you come to the last stitch on that row, on that petal, you just do a little stitch down here to catch it. And there. So I'm almost done with these flowers, so you could see how they turned out. I just have one last stitch on this. I'm going to start working on adding the shading that I want. I've been working on filling in the wild rose petals, and as you know, I started with the light pink, and I did a little bit of a medium pink, and then I went in with the darker pink. And this is what it looked like when I stopped, and it looked too choppy. So I thought with medium pink, what I'll do is I'll go back in and blend it. So let me show you. Can you see how these bottom 2 petals are much more nicely blended? So I'm taking 3 strands of a medium pink, and I'm going back in and I'm doing some blending of the colors to look smoother. I like the blending better, you can see that. So now I'm going to go work on these medium-sized roses that are half open. But what I'm going to do with these is the main color is going to be the medium pink, and then what I'll do is I'll come back and highlight it with the light pink and the really dark pink. So start right here. Okay. I don't know if this is totally unconventional, but I'm going in the opposite direction now because the secondary petal is behind it. So this area, I went this direction, this back petal, I'm going to go that direction with the blanket stitch. Again, I don't know if that's a big no-no. Like I said, I am an experimental stitcher, not a professional, not trained, just someone having fun, doing what makes me happy. And I'll show you what I mean in a second when I get this one done. Okay, so what I wanted to do was the petal was sort of folded. So visually, I wanted to have the stitches on this right-hand side look like it's different and coming from behind. So that actually ended up working just like I wanted it. Let me come a little closer. Maybe I'll do this middle petal. I'll do it opposite direction like this one, just to make it look different. Now I'm going to stop here because there was the last petal is going to go back again left to right. So I'll show you the difference. So the floss goes to the left this time. Come back down. And floss to the left. And it's a very subtle difference, but I think it's just enough to separate these different petals. So can you see what looks like several different petals happening there? And I decided what I'm going to do is go across with my blanket stitch to create the edge of the petal. And then I'm just going to do a little bit of a satin stitch down where it gets narrow. And what I'm going to do with that second area behind it, just to make it stand out differently, I'm going to stitch in a totally different direction, still doing the satin stitch, but it's going to go in this direction. So there is the top flower bud. I decided I'm going to go ahead and do some accent color to the petals that I've stitched already. And again, I'm using 3 strands. This time I'm going in with the darkest pink. But you could see how they're starting to separate from each other. They're not just all like this one on top, that they're all the flat color. So I'll come back when I have it finished. Added some dark pink on the top bud. I added the highlights to the buds, and there's that one. I'm working on the green area around the flower bud up here. And what I'm doing is letting the green overlap the petals that I did already. And you can see right there why I did the petals first, so that the green overlapping it actually wraps and gives it dimension. There are the 2 flower buds from the top. And I'm working on the base of this bud right there. I've been working on the center of the flower right now, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So I did this stitch. I have 6 strands of yellow floss, and I have a very large, I guess it's a darning needle, but you could find something similar to it. And I'm just going to lay it across, stitch back in place. I'm basically creating a loop. Oops. There's a loop on the needle, and I'm just creating several loops, and I want to pack them in fairly tightly so they hold each other in place. And after I have several loops, okay, and then I'm just going to pull the needle out, rotate it a bit, so now I have the center in a slightly raised pattern, and in the very middle I was going to put a bead, but I don't have the perfect, but I decided instead to do a French knot, a fairly big one. So I'm doing 4 wraps around it, and I'm pulling it down so it's low to the fabric, keeping a slight pressure or tension on the tail, and then you pull it through. And a little bit of the texture across it. But I also wanted to point out the alcohol ink wash. I wanted it very, very soft. The thing with the alcohol, using it on the background, it caused the archival ink to bleed when I stamped, but once you stitch over it, you don't really notice it, but you do want to be careful. There was one more thing I wanted to do, and this is using DMC 721, and I'm using 4 strands, and I'm going to add a little detail to the flowers. So you could see right around this flower, I added a little bit of orange floss sticking up. And I would suggest, I used 4 strands. I think 2 strands would be good for this. And so I'm going to work on this one using 2 strands of orange floss. But you can see how that turned out. Adds a whole nother dimension to it. Okay, so this is a comparison of the 2 styles trying to do the same thing. This is, down here is what I like better. It is 2 strands of the orange coming up, and this is 4 strands. I'm going to pull these out because I don't like the way they look so heavy, but I do like how the 2 strands, so I'm just going to do it over again on this one real fast. So there's the finished project using the Stampers Anonymous Tim Holtz embroidery stamp. See the roses right there. There's my Stitch Your Stamp project using it's a wild rose design, and I used alcohol inks on the background for a light wash. You can see it right here. And then I used embroidery floss and several different stitches to do up the roses. Embroidery is so relaxing, and I have to say, when you stitch your stamps, the area is rather small, so it's so easy to finish up. It goes so fast, and you just play with colors the way like you would with markers or paints or any other medium. I hope you enjoyed that video. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure and check out my website, LyndaCreates. That's Lynda with the Y, L-Y-N-D-A, LyndaCreates.com for more projects, more ideas, more designs. And follow me to also see all my Stitch Your Stamp ideas. Plus, I have a lot of paper craft ideas and other items. Leave a comment. Let me know if you'd like to see more of these Stitch Your Stamp embroidery projects. So I hope to see you in my next video. Thanks for watching. Bye!